This story is tragic and compelling, isn't it? Tell us more. Is that how you found it as well?
Yeah, it's definitely tragic and it's definitely compelling. And that was one of the things that attracted me to the story in the first place, to be able to tell this story. It's not really a story about racing drivers or racing cars. It's not for the car fanatics are going to come and see this film because it's Ferrari, but actually it's a human interest story. It's really about 5 characters and then Enzo above it, who are all charismatic. They were all interesting, daring, brave, and ultimately they all sacrificed their life in pursuit of their dream of being racing drivers. So it really is a story about human endeavour and bravery.
Indeed. I mean, watching the film and then thinking about you as a filmmaker, I wondered whether it was hard actually not to was it difficult to be objective, because these characters, these people were so immersive and interesting, and they came across really nice, and I just wondered, for you as a filmmaker, obviously you do need to have that point of view and be objective. Was that tricky for you?
It was tricky because there's so much information as well, and each of the individual characters, so you could have made a film about them individually. They all had enough of a backstory and were charismatic enough. So to be able to get the balance right, and then we've only got 90 minutes to tell such a lot of information and keep it interesting and keep the momentum of the film coming across. So being specific on what stories we wanted to tell or focus on was really crucial. And we went through, as you can imagine, numerous sort of permutations in the editing stage to hone it down and craft it and craft it and craft it. And obviously it started really long, and then we had to edit it down. But it was quite a conscious decision to all the time to make sure that we were focusing on the emotional side of it, and also to maintain or to get the integrity across, because these are drivers that a whole generation have never heard of. So we're trying to create this, hopefully making a legacy for them and bringing them back and making them immortal in however small a way we can do that. But we're bringing them to a whole new audience.
Generation of people as well. I mean, I have a minimal interest in motor racing, but I knew nothing about these men. But I think what I took away from watching the film was this sort of very visceral sort of emotion. You do really feel the tragedy, and it affects your mood, which is great because you want people to come away feeling something, don't you? It needs to have an emotional core, and the film definitely has that.
Yeah, without a doubt. So it was really important when Julie and I first met, and thankfully we had the same vision, because when I first got involved, we started to research this story. I didn't want to make a story about, or a film about technical details about how fast a car goes, or what petrol it uses, or what its tyres are, any of that stuff. I wasn't really interested in that. But what really did interest me was the characters, and that's really where the heart of this story and this film is about. And it was also intended, really quite consciously, to make it a film about that's open to females. It wasn't just to petrol heads and car fanatics. We really wanted to have this as a wide international audience, that anybody who's got any empathy as a human being should feel something and connect with these characters and our heroes from the film.
And it also doesn't shy away from Enzo being a what would you say? He's not an easy man, and I think that the documentary shows that honestly, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that was quite important, because it would have been very easy to have painted Enzo as this, this dictator, which everybody said he was, and kind of an unpleasant gentleman. But that was my opinion of him at the start of the film. But then 18 months later, it completely changed, and I actually have a whole different feeling about Enzo. I had empathy for him at the end of it, and I thought, he had a hard life, but he was self-made. Everything he did, he achieved himself. He had a focus, he had a goal, and he had the determination to see that through. Unfortunately, their lives were lost in the course of this, but as one of our contributors said, nobody forced the drivers to get into the car. It was their choice. They were racers, and he offered them the opportunity to race Ferrari, and they chose to do that. So, my opinion of Enzo is definitely one of respect, and I've got a whole newfound empathy for him.
And just finally, as well, on a technical level, you chose to use voiceover to cover the archive footage. What was the choice for you to tell that story that way?
Yeah, that was, it would have been easy to have done it the conventional way.
The talking heads.
The talking heads, but everybody's seen that before. And also what we decided was really powerful about this film was, when the audience start to watch it for the first time and they go into the cinema and it starts, we immediately take you back to the 50s. and we want to hold you in that for 85 minutes. We want to hold you in that period, that time frame. And it was beautiful, it was colourful, it was exotic, it was dangerous, and we wanted to stay there. If we'd have been jumping back and forth to reveal the contributors, it would have taken you in and out of the story. That was the first reason. And then secondly, actually by holding off revealing our contributors until the end of the film, it added so much more impact. And that when all of a sudden you've heard these voices and you've lived them and you've seen them as 20-year-olds or 25-year-old people, and they were young and they were beautiful, and then suddenly you see them today, and there's a whole realization that this was real, and these people went through this experience. And I think holding off until right at the end really added a powerful visual and emotion. As an
audience member seeing that, yeah, it definitely did have a very powerful. It was. Yes, it was. Yeah, it's just this kind of stark contrast, and it just felt very fitting way as well to round it off. So yeah, no, I did. I very much enjoyed it. Best of luck, and you. It's an incredibly powerful, heartfelt film, isn't it? Is that what you found when you first saw it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly emotional story. I mean, we've been working on it for 18 months. So the genesis of it has moved quite a bit from where it started in the beginning. But it obviously, it's an incredibly emotional story. So we get emotional every time we see it. So we've seen it 100 times, of course, because we've been involved in the editing process for a very long time. Well, I mean, actually, I say a long time, but actually in the kind of genesis of documentary, it's been 18 months from the time we started. And so actually 18 months is quite a relatively fast time in documentary terms. Yes. Yes.
We've got voiceover accompanying archive footage. Where did you start? Did you start with the archive material and formulate that so you knew how to interview your subjects and the information that you needed, or was it vice versa?
Well, we had a sort of narrative arc that we wanted to depict in the documentary. So obviously, the interviews, the filming at Goodwood to create the sound that we needed from all the different period engines, that started it. Then we started with continued with all the interviews, and then bit by bit, as the archive came together, we were able to delve deeper and deeper into the story. And then more things emerged, more about Enzo Ferrari, more about, particularly Portago. Fond of Portago came out more as we dug deeper and deeper and deeper into the archive. So, but we had a fairly clear idea of the story that we wanted to tell, and we were just very lucky that we found an incredible amount of archive to be able to tell this amazing story. Yes.
And were you must have been surprised by many things, a lot what you found out along the way. Was there anything that you perhaps found shocking or what you didn't expect?
Well, we knew an awful lot about the subject matter. We'd done a huge amount of research, so there weren't really very many surprises, but certainly facets of the characters came out more as we saw them in the actual archive footage, because Taffy von Trips had shot this amazing archive of them all.